just had to share. So the blinds are coming in. Yee. So with all the blinds installed, just look how it transforms the room. It's like a totally different space. All right, so welcome to Tiny Life Takeover. My name is Denis Daigle, and in this short episode today, I'm going to talk about setting up the Nature Heads composting toilet. And I'll tell you all about the reasons why I'm doing that. But number one, yes, this episode is about toilet and poop and pee, and forgive me for all of that. If it disgusts you, then absolutely skip on to the next video. But if you're interested in setting something up for you and why I'm doing it and how, then I invite you to follow along. And I just wanted to, show you these blinds and maybe add that point. Clearly, my design is very huge windows, and I was warned that the blinds were going to be very expensive, but I did find a local manufacturer here that I got them for a great price. So it just serves that, yes, it can be super expensive, but do your homework and maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised like I was. So now I'm good with these, low fume, and I'm gonna keep some of the big heat from coming in. So I'm super excited. This is all coming together, everybody. Oh, yes. All right. So let me go find my hat and I'll get started. All right, let's go look at the toilet. So here's what I have set up. This Nature's Head composting toilet separates the liquid from the solid. Yes, gentlemen, you're gonna have to sit down to pee. It's not the end of the world. It's actually the better way to do it because it doesn't splash everywhere. As you've seen in some of the other videos, I have a vent out that goes into the wall, and based on recommendations to pipe it out and above everything else. Because see how this is where people sit? So if my fumes came out here and they would dwell amongst the people, we don't want that. So it's piped up, pushed by a small fan. That's number one. And number two, I'm gonna start with the liquids. So after researching, people seem to be okay with this toilet. There's not a lot of smell unless you stick your face right in this. But one tip that I did here is to put half a cup of sugar into this when you cycle it. It seems to help with the urine smell. So I'm gonna do that. And to do it, a couple of snaps, lift it up. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of this on here and try not to make a mess. All right, number three is going to be filling in for the solids, and for that I'm going to be using peat moss. Let's take a second to talk about why. So when thinking about how to fill the solid section and what to use as the composting material, I was recommended everything in the research. You'll see it too. Some coconut husk, so coconut core, wood chips, sawdust, and peat moss. So the decision for peat moss is because we have a local factory or a local company, a couple of them actually, that take peat moss and sell it. Relatively inexpensive, but it's because it's close by. Do we have coconuts that grow here in Atlantic Canada? No. So that means if I was to order coconut core, I would have to order it, get it shipped over, and then you start to kind of weigh the pros and cons of it. So for me, it's just so much easier just to get peat moss. But there is a bit of a caveat to that. My dad had set this up, tested it, used it for about a year, and to him it was the fan up here. It seems to clog because of the very fine particles of the peat moss. So he's added a small mesh just to help with those smaller particles. The reason why is because the fan can get clogged and stop, and then clearly it doesn't do what it needs to remove those that moisture and that methane gas. So now that that's there, what I'm going to do to fill it, and that's all I've been recommended, is to lay this bar flat and then fill it up until it gets to that bar, just lightly, and then that's really all I need to do to set that up. So I'm gonna head in. And I guess as I'm filling some of that in now, I'm remembering that when I was researching what to use, you can buy this coconut core, and when you get it, it's a solid brick, so you have to pound it to try to powder it. And of course, peat moss just is already all nice and fluffy. Add that in, so that, I guess that's another bonus of using that peat moss. So this is about the level that I'm going to go at, so just so that it's at the bar level. And then when you go, you just give this a couple of turns, and it's going to start the mixing and then the composting side of the deal. All right, so now I'm going to close this up and lock it. So what's left? Well, let's talk about using it. So as you can see, this is the back flap. So if you sit down, you open the flap, you go, you wipe, you close the flap. When you pee, I've been advised this mixture of half vinegar, half water. You spritz it around, the vinegar helps eliminate bacteria, smell, and whatnot. And if there's any traces, you can kind of keep spraying that. So we're going to keep that handy. So one of the points that I want to add as well is that this tiny house is on my parents' land, and there's no plans to do any composting, dig holes in the ground. We're so close to water, so I have to figure something out that's going to work also in the wintertime, where the septic is going to be filled with snow, so to be able to dig that out, to throw the compost in and all of that. So it seems as though the best choice that I'm going to have to try the first winter is going to be dispose of it through the normal garbage procedure. So then, how do you best go about that? And when I started looking at the guidelines on how you can throw something out, well, it seems to be in a clear garbage bag. So I'm choosing biodegradable garbage bags that I can throw everything out. So I could put the toilet paper in with the solids and be fine with that. But I'm also looking to see kind of different ways and alternatives to it. One is preparing that I could fully compost the solids. And people have recommended that if you're going to do that, it's easier if you don't put the toilet paper in with the composting material and the solids. And if you've ever traveled to Dominican Republic, you know that you can't flush toilet paper anyways, so it's just the same kind of scenario. So one of the questions that I was wondering, how often should I have to change this? If you're one person using this, the urine container, when you can't stand it or when there's just, when there's too much, you empty it out. And I may just empty that out in my parents' septic or their toilet, or I can figure out a place here that you can sort of use that nitrogen and feed the plants around. And the solids, you can go 1 or 2, maybe 3 months without changing anything, because the moisture is being drawn out by that fan. Everything composts and it just turns into dry solids. That pretty much sums up how I'm setting up the toilet. A bit of a disgusting subject, but as you can see, once it's set up in a way, this is how you use a composting toilet. And I have to use a composting toilet because I'm so close to water. The water's right there, and I'm not about to try to dig a septic system, and it's leaching. There's just no way that I can be this close to water and have a normal toilet. And it's a pleasure for me to try this. Ask me again in 6 months or a year, and I'll let you know how well this works. But listen, I have a working toilet in my tiny house on wheels by the river. Hallelujah. That's one more thing done. Almost ready for me to move in. It's really the little things. Like, I put a heater here, and I can rest my head on the heater and enjoy the nice heat while I have the nice view. So, Lou with a view, thank you. So that's it from the tiny house by the river. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to give this a go. Take care of each other, and until the next time, God bless.